Hello, and welcome to Havoc Wargaming, dedicated to bringing you the uncommon. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Ron, and today we're going to do a box opening of Force of Virtue by Masterstroke Games. So let's get started. Force of Virtue is a game that I hadn't even heard of at the beginning of this summer. I was contacted by one of its authors who asked if I might do a box opening and a review of the game. He is a long-term viewer of this channel. Hey, Jack. And I believe him because he sent me a copy of the game. Originally, I got a PDF and some copies of the cards and some sample games, and this game is exactly the kind of game I enjoy. This isn't meant to be a review, but I'm going to do a review separately, but I might get a little reviewy about this because this game has become very important to me. I've really enjoyed it. I've introduced it to my club, and a lot of the club members have really adopted to it. It is really a lot of fun. I've done a couple videos of it already. Now that I have the starter set, I'll do a little bit more of that, and I'll talk more about how the game works and some of the my opinions of it as a game. But today, we're going to talk about what actually comes in the box and things about the quality of that box. Now, I think this may be an option, I'm not sure, or maybe he's changed his mind. This is in a tin box. I believe it was originally going to be a choice between cardboard and tin, so I don't know. Also, I'm cheating a little. Some items that were a friend of mine were included in this and have been taken out. So this isn't really the first time I've opened this, but it's pretty close. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So, Force of Virtue, for those of you who are not aware, was created by a number of reenactors and members of HEMA. What is it? Historical European Martial Arts Society. It's a group that I've been interested in for a while. I've never actually participated in their things, but I came very close when I was younger and more physically fit. It was intriguing me, and it plays over in the game, not the way I expected. I thought it would have a really cool fighting mechanic system that would be based on that. Kind of has happened with Moonstone. For those of you who don't know, the creator of Moonstone is a member of HEMA, and you can feel that in the game. This is broader, and maybe because of the reenacting aspect, I don't know. It's not so much the combat of this that feels very historic and true to the period. It's everything. It's the culture, the society, some of the weapons, not so much the mechanics of the weapons, but some of the details of how they create in the charts you use for the weapons are obviously based on some of their experiences with modern versions and reproductions of these items. But the game actually has a really strong historic feel over and beyond just combat. Anyway, so it comes in a tin. It's got a simple, I thought it was going to be an overleaf, but it isn't. It's like a sticker decaled on here. You have to cut it on the one side. It is permanently affixed to the box. The emblems on the front, it's got not only the name Force of Virtue, but these emblems are the icons for the different primary virtues. And if you're not familiar with the idea of virtues in combat that these are based on, it's very similar to the idea of the four elements or the humors of the medieval period, though they're different names: strength, fortitude, speed, and prudence. Let's go say and see what's in the box. So, very important to this game is the idea of cards. There's a handful of card decks in here. This is the Saint and Sinners cards. One of the things that he's done that's brilliant and has changed since I bought my original stuff is that the card decks are kind of pricey, and they are necessary to play the game. These are the root of the game. And originally, character decks, which these are two of, were being sold for the same price individually as what's now two for the price of any of the other nation decks. So I think that was a good choice. I'm going to go ahead and open up one of these. This, as I said, is the Saints and Sinners, which means it is the Dogs of War deck, character deck. These are for hardened soldier type of soldiers that have been recruited out of jails or been saved from the gallows. And then the Saints are what used to be the Fires of Faith. So that would be great for like papal units or very, very religious ones. Cards are changed from my original cards. I didn't bring those, but the first cards I bought are weird. I don't think it's bad. I can't decide what I think of them, but they're kind of plastic coated. I don't know what they are or what they're based on. These are more like a normal playing deck, which is kind of what I expected originally. The cards are all multicolored. They always have a little scene in them, descriptions of how they work, the name of the card. Very good quality. The prints are well. The backs are very fancy and nice. Maybe more than they needed to be, but still, they have different art in the middle to help you remember which deck they go to. The cards. This is not a card-activated game. These cards aren't determining who you activate or what you get to do when you activate or when they're randomly drawn. There's nothing like that in the game. These are more your character sheet, your campaign record for the game if you're playing campaigns, and your list of special ability skills, weapons, or things you may have. This basically just resolves your paperwork. But they are instrumental to the game because everything is based upon these. What your guys can do is listed on here, what they're carrying, what their cards are done. These are divided into 3 sorts of decks. I mentioned earlier these are character decks. Character decks have to do with the nature, feel, or character of the people. Mostly your capos, who are the guys commanding the units. So there's 4 character decks right now. The 2 I already mentioned here, Fires of Faith, Dogs of War. Then beyond that, there is Rennaisance Man that gives you some of the special abilities you might expect from a man living of the age. This game is set to take place in the beginning of the Age of Renaissance, in the beginning of Rome's Renaissance in 1492 and the rise of the Borgia, which is something that makes it very interesting too. Then the next group is Bred to Battle, and Bred to Battle is the idea of those noble families that are raised to be soldiers and commanders. It's sort of the opposite of the Dogs of War soldiers. It comes with the 2 scenario decks. The next type of deck that we're going to talk about are the nation decks. And the starter set comes with 2 of these. They are the Condottieri, the famous Italian mercenaries of the period, and the Swiss, pretty famous on their own right. Beyond these 2, there are also French, Landsknechts, Spanish. I think that's it. I may be forgetting somebody, but I think that's it. I imagine these are typically 55 cards in these boxes. I'm sure it's going to be pretty much similar to what we just described before. Now these cards will give you your capos, your leaders. This game is really about running and playing the capos. The honor cards or intrigue cards are various things they can do because of who they are or how they're trained. That's what the nation cards represent, is your background, your training, your supply. And so that's where the cards come in play, is they help you decide narratively what your group is about. Build a campaign deck or warband deck out of a series of 3 of these decks. Typically, you can't have more than 2 nation decks, but up to 2 nation decks and then a character deck. The last deck type is the campaign decks. These can be added without. It doesn't count as a 4th deck or count against your 3. There's also a cool advanced rule in the game, or optional rule, that allows you to pull 6 of these randomly at the end of the game, before the game, that are distributed betwixt each of you that help you take advantage of particular circumstances. And these are very much built around the feeling of that Renaissance Italy. So there's ambush cards, there's new capos like an artist, an assassin, banker. There's crumbling edifice because Rome is falling apart in the period. The Duchess. Hangovers, ill discipline, local militia, lost. There's night attacks. There's a number of night rules that are in here, specifically in the campaign decks. I've really been wanting this deck. I've been having to play either with pre-created units that are online. This game is very well supported, both on Discord and on the Force of Virtue official page. And so there's some sample war bands on there to get you started. There's a whole tutorial game on there, and those have cards printed with them. So you could get the PDF of the game, which is only €6, I think. You can get the PDF of the game. You could print out some of those and experiment with the game before you invest in anything. Because, as I say, the cards are a little pricey. This is a good way to do it, though. Then there's the dice. It does use custom-made dice. Not a requirement. The rules even tell you. The colors are kind of important. These different colors represent the different virtue in the game and are very important to how you play the game. And I'll show you how that works in the how to play video I'll do later. These are really mostly only customized in the fact that they have little triangles for blips. They have an X, which represents a failure. That's the 1. And the icon for the particular virtue that represents the 6. 1s are always fails and are crit fails, or fumbles. And a 6 is always a success and is usually a critical success. And that's where the flavor of the virtues really come in, is in those failures and successes. There's a little copy of the rulebook. Again, I mentioned the rulebook is available on PDF. I can't stress enough that while the decks are kind of expensive for this game does not have to have an expensive setup to get you started. The PDF of the rules is available. That's what I've been using for the last few months. And it's relatively inexpensive. I'm very inexpensive, I think €6. You only use a handful of figures, between anywhere from 1 to up to maybe 20. Typically it's about 6, 9, somewhere in there. So not a big investment. You can buy a box of European mercenaries from Perry, and that can create 3 different war bands for this game. And in the rules they even tell you about not needing their specific dice. You can use any colored dice. I bought a random set of cheap Chinese that already had all the dice colors I needed. We're going to be talking about tokens in a moment. The tokens I've never even used yet because I don't have any until now. If you have enough dice, you can get around just using the dice as the tokens as well as the dice. The rule book is pretty much what I'm used to from this, having seen the PDF version of it. There's beautiful artwork in here, combinations of pictures of games and models and actual period art, a lot of period art. It's got a really nice feel to it that way. The rules do have a couple of issues. There's a few things that aren't described. They're kind of left out. That are kind of important. There is an FAQ available on the resources section of that webpage. There's also a whole series of educational videos where it explains how the game feels. I didn't realize these rules were even missing. It was pointed out to me because I've learned a lot of the rules by watching his videos. So that's an advantage. How to use the cards, how to read the cards is explained in here. The rules, let's see, these are 65-page long, and they do a very good job of describing most of what you need. They're very easy to follow. It's not a complicated set of rules. If there's a challenge to these rules, it's that an awful lot of the mechanics are really a new concept and really different than games you're used to. There's a whole lot more originality in the creation of the mechanics of this game than you will commonly find in a game, and that's, I think, one of the strong points. It helps give it its culture or its feel of the period as well. Very, very good game and well set up. There is a QRS here. Let's see if I can get it out. These are the crits. I mentioned earlier that the crits are what really give a lot of the flavor to the game. You roll for crits. There's a couple other ways you roll them, but normally you roll them for when you're moving, you're meleeing, or shooting. And the result of a fumble or a crit success will vary in what you're rolling for, what you've done, and which virtue you're using. So really it's in your crits that you get the feel for the virtue. Otherwise it's just a die roll. But the crits give you responses that make sense. In fact, a friend of mine complained the other day he had a bunch of prudence and he kept failing in his attacks because you probably shouldn't be attacking with prudence. So it really made sense, and it's a really good film. It's hard to explain just here at a box opening, so I'll give you a better idea when I do a game play of it again. And on the back of this is a nice reminder of what the different things are and the different rules and how they work. Now the reason I waited to bring out the tokens is because the tokens are a little more complicated than I thought they were going to be. They come in a little pouch, a little cotton that feels like maybe polyester, or called polydrill or something. But there's certain plastic basic chips, or the colors are designed to match the colors of the dice. These represent the different virtue. So you use these to determine how much of virtue is available to you and how many you're playing, which will determine how your dice are rolling. I'm trying to find a way to also use these, or will be now that I have them, to determine how to make that work for controlling your faith, which you can only play so many virtue on an individual character at a time, and you're limited in the actions you can take as well. And sometimes it's a little hard to keep some of that straight, to remember how many you've done. So I think there's probably a way to make this work for that. So what they've done that I wasn't expecting is they've included stickers to turn these into tokens for the game. So there's a series of tokens that represent the different virtues, that have the different creatures on them that are the icons for the virtue. And then there's a bunch of skulls. These will be the reverse side of the token, because the token, the way they work is a token has three states it can be in. It can be unspent, which means it's sitting on your card waiting for you to decide to use it. Then once you use it, it becomes spent, and you'll usually represent the spent just by taking it off of the card and placing it next to the card. That'll signify that it's not available to be played again in this round. And then there's burnt, and burnt is a bigger issue. Certain fumbles can cause you to burn. Anytime an attack gets through your armor and you have to roll a wound save, that will cause you to burn virtue. And so that's represented by flipping the token over to its devil side, which means that's burnt. And the biggest difference is that you have to rally to get your burnt virtue back, whereas your spent virtue just comes back each round. When the turn's over, you get all those back. But it's a little harder to get back your burn virtue. Virtue is the commodity by which this game is played. It is how you activate your troops by spending virtue on them. It determines the number of dice you're going to roll based on which virtue and how many you pay for the individuals. It's also the morale rolls. So anytime you have figures that are outside of the command range of a capo with no unburnt virtue, you're just gone. And that includes capos. If capos are out of virtue themselves and they're not within the command range of some other capo, they're just gone. They leave. This is a game about mercenaries, and only the capos are actually really concerned with victory or not. The mercenaries are just doing what they're told and following the instructions of the guys with them, and they would rather stay alive than die to meet the achievements of their boss, their capo. So that's what comes in the box. I'm really pleased by the quality of these. In fact, I think some of it maybe have improved of what I've had before. If I have a challenge with the company, it is that. This is a relatively new gaming company, and the game is relatively new. As far as I can tell, was really only about January that they started putting it together, and they did that a lot through playtests with people who were following it. They have a very big playtest and supportive group on their Discord pages I already mentioned. The negative aspect of this is only the fact that things keep changing. There's a couple of little typos on the cards. Those are changing as we speak. In fact, the materials of these cards have changed since the first ones I bought. So there's that. And there's even the possibility that the artwork on those cards is about to change. So that's kind of an issue, is I think you don't necessarily know what things are going to look like before you get them, because it is being treated very much as an ongoing project. While I'm hinting at that possibility negative, it's also a good thing, because they're fixing issues with the rules, making it easier to understand. They are trying to make the cards more easy to read. They've already made some alterations in how shipping works, which is making it easier to the financial burden of those cards. The cards are still kind of pricey on their own, but it used to be they were really expensive, and the shipping was really expensive. And right now, there's two ways to order any of this materials right now. You can order these from the UK-based company, Masterworks, which is actually Tempest Fusion, I think. But you can order through the English company much of this materials. If you order from the Euro-based cost page, which I think is in Ireland, you get they're offering, and maybe the other will later, I don't know, but right now they're offering a free shipping package anytime you pay over 80 euros. That's one thing I would recommend that'll help offset the starter sets, or not the starter sets, the cards, if you're buying cards. You don't really need a whole bunch of the starter sets. People may want them because of the additional rules, particularly if you like a hard copy set of the rules like I do instead of the PDF. There may be a time where having more dice and tokens is good. But what you're really after are those cards. And if you have in your playing group, if one guy bought the starter set, then you could just look at buying cards for the others. And what I would suggest is that you get together on those cards. And only one person's cards won't take you over the 80 euro minimum for the free shipping. But just two people certainly will. And you can save some money that way. And right now, unfortunately, shipping from America to Europe is expensive, particularly to the UK, and vice versa. From the UK is really expensive. So working together is a way to make this, because it is a very boutique game. I should probably mention that. I think that's where this price comes from. So I hate to dwell on that price so much, because I think the game is well worth it. Every other component of the game is relatively inexpensive and easy put together. It's just the cards. And I suspect that part of why those cards are expensive is because it's a small boutique game. He's probably not printing enough of them to get the better discounts that you might get. But let me assure you it's worth it. I'm going to try to convince you of that by showing a review later and showing you how to play a game. But this is what you get in the starter box to get you started. All of it's very good quality. It gives you a tin box. So yeah, I look forward to sharing this game more with you. As I say, I've become a little infatuated with it. It's my thought that if you give it a try, you might as well. Thanks a lot. I hope you're interested. If any of you are interested, or if any of you actually played the game, I'd like to see comments about that down in the comment section below. If you have any questions, please put those in the comment section below. Also, if you have ideas for further content you'd like to see us produce here on Cry Havoc Wargaming, we look for the comment section for those as well. If you've enjoyed the video, I hope you'll hit like. If you'd like to continue to receive notifications for videos like this one, or others that may help you better determine how to spend your money or time in your tabletop wargaming hobby, then I hope you'll hit subscribe and ring our notification bell. Till next time, cheers.